They said the moon chooses who will break the chain, but no one believed it would choose a slave. Beneath the crimson light of the lunar auction, Ira Valen is sold like a relic from a forgotten god. Her tears glimmer brighter than gold, catching the eye of Crown Prince Kael Draven, a man who swore he could never feel. What if her tears weren't sorrow, but prophecy? What if the girl he bought for one night was the very one fated to end his empire? They told Ira not to look at him, not to meet the eyes of the man who owned her name. But when Kael approached, something ancient stirred inside her. She didn't see a prince. She saw the same loneliness she carried in her own reflection. Kael reached out, not to touch her, but to test her silence. Yet her quiet was not fear. It was defiance wrapped in grace. For the first time, he wondered if obedience could ever look this free. The moon outside burned crimson as if watching them both. Kael asked her name. Though he already knew it, Ira whispered, "Names have power." The silence that followed was heavier than any chain. When he finally turned away, he told himself it was just a transaction. But her tears, silent and luminous, had already carved themselves into his memory. Kael Draven had bought one night. Fate had bought his soul. He had expected fear, trembling, and tears. Instead, she met his gaze with quiet defiance, her silence cutting deeper than any scream. In that stillness, Kael Draven realized that Ira Valen was not the broken thing he thought he had purchased. She was a mirror to his own emptiness. Kael broke the silence first. "Why don't you cry?" he asked. Ira turned her head slightly, her voice steady and soft. "Because men like you wouldn't know what to do with my pain." His breath caught, though he didn't know why. That night, Kael watched her sleep. Not from desire, but from confusion. She looked peaceful, untouched by the nightmares that plagued him. When she murmured his name in her dreams, he felt something ancient shift inside him, something he had spent years trying to bury. At dawn, he ordered her to eat beside him, a gesture meant to remind her of her place. But when she bowed her head and whispered a prayer before touching the food, Kael couldn't look away. Her faith, the kind that survived slavery, unsettled him more than rebellion ever could. When she finally spoke his name, not as a prince, not as a master, but as a man, Kael felt the weight of every sin he had justified. He bought her for one night, but by dawn he knew he had traded something far greater. His certainty, his control, his heart. Kael Draven dreamed of her before she was born. In his sleep, he saw Ira standing beneath the same blood moon, whispering his name through centuries of silence. When he woke, his hands were trembling, and the faint scent of moonlight lingered on his skin. Was this fate, or a curse older than memory itself? He found her in the library at dawn, surrounded by books she couldn't read. "You don't belong here," he said. She looked up and smiled softly. "Neither do you." In that instant, the walls he had built between power and humanity began to crumble. That night, a storm broke over Dravenhold. Lightning danced across the sky as Ira's tears glowed faintly with silver light. When Kael reached out to wipe one away, it burned his skin, softly, not in pain, but in recognition. The prophecy was waking. "Nor a Cernanski," he demanded answers from Lady Seraphine, but her silence was colder than truth. "You were never meant to love her," she said. "The moon marked her for ruin, and you for judgment." Yet, the more Kael tried to deny it, the more the mark beneath his skin began to burn. When Kael returned to his chambers, Ira was waiting, not as a servant, but as fate itself. She touched his hand and light erupted between them, ancient and blinding. In that moment, he saw the truth. They were bound not by choice, but by the tears of the first moon. The forbidden light was love. The palace awoke to whispers. The prince had broken the sacred rule. Love between royal blood and the moon-marked was forbidden. Lady Seraphine summoned Kale at dawn, her words cutting like steel, wrapped in silk. "You've bound yourself to the girl who carries the curse meant to end your reign." Irritated by the balcony, unaware of the storm brewing within the court, she felt it in her chest. A pull, sharp and strange, as though the moon itself trembled. Somewhere deep inside her, the ancient voice whispered, "He will betray you before he understands why." Lady Seraphine's words struck Kale harder than any sword. "The moon doesn't choose love, my prince. It chooses balance. Her tears will wash away your throne." He wanted to deny it, but a part of him, the part that dreamed of her before they met, already knew it was true. Ira found him in the garden that night, his eyes hollow and his voice distant. "They say you were born to destroy me," he confessed. She stepped closer, tears shining like silver stars. "Then why did your touch keep saving me?" In that question, he felt the edge of his undoing. When the guards came for her at dawn, Kale didn't stop them, not because he wanted to, but because Lady Seraphine's prophecy echoed in his mind. "To save your crown, you must let her fall." And so he watched as Ira was taken away, her silent gaze shattering everything he once believed. Was strength. Frein. Or Free should stay nine war. The night Ira vanished, the empire changed. Rebellion spread like wildfire, and Kale Draven's heart became its silent battlefield. Every city burned with the echo of her name, whispered by the people he once ruled. Through fear. For the first time, he fought not for his crown, but for the chance to make her forgive him. Far beyond the city, Ira was no longer a prisoner. She had been rescued by the rebels, and among them was a face she thought lost forever. "Lucen," she whispered, voice trembling. Her brother stepped from the shadows, sword in hand, eyes filled with both love and fury. "You were his slave, Ira. Now you'll be his reckoning." Kale's army clashed with Lucen's forces beneath the crimson dawn. Steel met steel, but Kale's thoughts were elsewhere, on a silver-haired girl whose tears haunted every strike. As blood soaked the ground, the prophecy's words came alive. The moon's child will end the empire with love, not blades. Ira ran to the field of dying men, ignoring Lucen's cries to stay behind. The sight of Kale bleeding on the ground froze her world. She fell to her knees beside him, tears spilling freely, but this time her tears glowed brighter, weaving themselves into the wound. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered, voice shaking with light. As the rain turned silver, the fighting stopped. Soldiers on both sides watched as Kale opened his eyes, light shining from his chest where her tears had fallen. Lucen lowered his sword, realizing the truth. This war had never been about thrones or crowns. It was about a bond older than the empire itself. Love had become rebellion. The war was over, but peace never came. Every night, Ira woke screaming, her tears turning to light that burned through stone. The power inside her had awakened, a power that even the gods feared. Kale held her through every trembling breath, knowing that with each tear, she was fading further from him. Lady Seraphine returned, cloaked in white, this time, not as a priestess, but as a messenger of truth. "The breaking moon has begun," she whispered. "When her light touches the heavens, her heart will stop beating." Kale felt the world tilt. To save her, he would have to destroy the bond that kept their souls entwined. Ira overheard their words, every one of them. That night, she stood beneath the moon and smiled through her tears. "If my light kills me," she whispered, "then let it save them." She walked into the darkness before dawn, leaving behind the man who had once sworn never to feel. Kale found her at the altar of the first moon, her hands raised to the sky as light poured from her body. "You can't do this," he shouted. She turned, smiling softly. "You once bought me to break me, Kale. Now I break to free you." Her voice trembled with the sound of goodbye. As her final tear fell, it split the sky. The moon cracked open, flooding the world with silver fire. Kale fell to his knees, screaming her name as the light swallowed everything. And then, silence. Only her whisper remained. Love me beyond the light. When the world awoke, it did so in silence. The sky, once split by silver fire, hung pale and wounded. The ocean whispered against broken stone as Kale Draven rose from the wreckage, his body marked by ash and light. Iravallen was gone. Only her scent lingered, faint as a prayer lost to wind. The people crowned him savior, though he felt like a ghost wearing another man's name. The empire he had once ruled by cruelty now knelt to him in reverence. Yet Kale knew the truth. Kingdoms could be rebuilt, but the woman who taught him to feel could not be reborn. He stood among ruins that glittered with fragments of moonlight, whispering her name to a sky that refused to answer. The wind carried only the echo of her last words. Love me beyond the light. Years drifted by, measured not in seasons but in silence. Kale Draven became a ruler unlike any before him, the Prince of Mercy, the builder of peace. He dismantled the Empire's cruelty brick by brick, turning the auction halls into sanctuaries for the lost. Children born with the tear mark were no longer hidden. They were honored. Yet every night he stood on the same balcony, watching a sky without its moon, feeling the emptiness pulse through his veins. Power no longer mattered. Victory no longer burned. What haunted him was the memory of silver hair glowing in moonlight and eyes that had seen through every mask he wore. He whispered her name, Aira, like a prayer, not to summon her back, but to remind himself that he once loved enough to change the world. On the anniversary of her sacrifice, Kale returned to the garden that had survived every war. The roses there had turned silver, blooming even in frost, their petals glowing faintly at night. He knelt among them, his heart a whisper against the earth, and felt a pulse beneath his hand. Steady. Alive. A single petal drifted into his palm, warm against his skin, humming with something that was almost a heartbeat. He closed his eyes and breathed her name, and the wind shifted, carrying a soft fragrance. Jasmine and starlight, her scent. For the first time in years, Kale smiled. Not the smile of a king, but of a man who felt her presence again. Somewhere between light and memory, between heaven and his heart. That night, rain began to fall, but it wasn't water. It shimmered, glowing softly as it drifted from the heavens. Kale stepped into the courtyard, head tilted to the light that fell like silver threads. The rain gathered around him, forming a shape, fragile at first, then radiant. Her silhouette appeared, made of moonlight and memory, her silver hair flowing like mist, her gray eyes alive with love and sorrow. You kept your promise, she said, her voice echoing through his bones. He reached out, afraid she'd vanish like every dream before her. But when his hand met hers, warmth flooded him. Real. Undeniable. Iravallen stood before him once more, reborn from light, not as a spirit, but as the heartbeat the world had mourned. When dawn came, it came gently, not in fire but in peace. Ira stood beside Kale, her hand intertwined with his, her eyes watching the first sunrise over a healed world. You built it, she whispered, a place where no one wears chains. He looked at her, his smile trembling. You gave me the reason. The light of dawn mingled with the faint glow of her tears. Not sorrow this time, but joy. Together they watched as the moon began to mend in the sky, its broken pieces drawing together in a slow, luminous dance. It was proof that even what had been shattered by love could be made whole again. And as the sun rose higher, Kale pressed his forehead to hers and whispered, This time I keep you. The day answered in gold.